Buenos dias. Hola. ¿Cómo le va? How are you today? I trust all is well. Are you getting ready for... Well, you know, I'm taping this before it happened, but I wonder how the sales numbers were for Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. There's a Macy's near the apartment that my wife and I live in, downtown Brooklyn. And at some time, I wonder if they're doing it this year, they open up at midnight, Thanksgiving night. Get it? Thanksgiving is over, everybody's full. But they open their special sales. You know of this, I'm sure, and in other stores. They open up at midnight. And one year, I just had to see this. So at 1:30 in the morning, I went over to Macy's, thinking there might be 5 or 6 people in the whole store. I was greatly surprised. Everyone was just running around, shoving each other, and they couldn't keep anything neat in the store because people were just picking up, no, I don't want this, throwing stuff. Oh man, the toy department looked like a hurricane that hit it, a tornado. But no present you get for Christmas will satisfy your soul. No Christmas present you give. They're nice, you give a gift, thing people need especially, but most of us, we get stuff we don't need. But only Jesus satisfies. That's what the holiday really is about. Maybe you can give Jesus to someone. Talk to them about Christ. That's the best present. Well, we're reading in Hebrews 3, and it says, we are his house, verse 6, and we are his house if indeed, we hold firmly to our confidence and the hope in which we glory. So now the writer is giving we're this, we are that, he's built the house, he dwells within, and we are his house if we hold firmly to our confidence and the hope in which we glory. And a lot of Christians, believers, churchgoers, we don't like any conditional, nothing conditional. Hey, I got saved and that's it. I believe in the eternal security. I'm this, I'm that. That's it. I can live kind of loose any way I want because, hey, my name is written in the Lamb's Book. Nobody can erase it. Well, tell me if you get that feeling by what we're going to read today. This was written to Christians, Jewish believers, but we read it today, and it's for our edification. And now the writer is going to point back to Israel's history after they came out of Egypt, after they passed through the Red Sea, after they were named as God's people, after God made a covenant with them by law. And he's now reminding us, as we're seeing, look what happened to them and wake up. Be warned. Be alert. Don't get sloppy. It doesn't matter. Well, tell me if you think it doesn't matter. So, verse 7, as the Holy Spirit says, quoting from Psalm 95. So almost 1,000 years earlier, David wrote this. So, as the Holy Spirit says through that psalm and through that psalmist, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. That's the beginning of verse 8. Well, let me read 7 and 8. So, as the Holy Spirit says, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your heart as you did in the rebellion during the time of testing in the wilderness. Listen again. Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your heart, as Israel did, i.e., in the rebellion during the time of testing in the wilderness. Today, if you hear his voice. Couple important things for us today about this verse. There's only one day. God has only one day. It's today. What's the day of salvation that someone can find Christ and have their eternity settled with Christ? Today. Not yesterday, and it's a terrible thing to say mañana. That's tempting God. It's like St. Augustine said when he was living a terrible, unclean life before he became a born-again believer. He was involved in all kinds of vices and immorality. He said, God, save me, cleanse me, but not yet. Not yet. I got to sow some more wild oats. That is really tempting God, isn't it? And there's a warning against that. Today, if you hear his voice, don't harden your hearts. So that tells us that God has a voice, and he's always speaking every day, that it's today. By his word, by his spirit. And the writer here is saying, be attentive to that voice. Don't harden your heart. Notice where the voice is heard. Not in just your mind, but your heart. God deals with the heart. God lives in our hearts, our inner spiritual being. Today, if you hear his voice, not if you went to church on Sunday, because you can hear the preacher on Sunday or another day, or you can pick up a book and read it just mentally, even the Bible. But do you hear his voice in your heart? Today, if you hear his voice, don't harden your heart. Don't block what he's saying. Don't discard what he's saying. Don't put off what he's saying. That's what the writer is saying to us. The proof of us really belonging to Christ is that we daily are under his control, and we're not running the show, but he's running the show. That's why we belong to him and we call him Lord. Today, if you hear his voice, and when he speaks, many times he wants to make alterations, corrections. Many times he just gives assurances and encouragement, and he says, I love you, I'm with you, in times of fear. But other times he says, you are heading the wrong way. You're growing distant to me. Draw near to me, I'll draw near to you. And the writer here is saying, today, this day you're listening to me, if we're all alive by the time this plays on a Tuesday in late November, today, if you hear his voice, what's he saying to you? He has already spoken to me today, and I'm trying to tenderly be sensitive to his voice. May you walk with God today, and may God give us all the blessing of a sensitive, tender heart that hears the voice of the living God. See you tomorrow.